back to the Game Positive podcast, where we discuss gaming on the bright side. Can I even do podcasts, though? It's been a very long time. And look, if I'm being honest, the reason I haven't been podcasting lately is partially time-related, or the lack thereof time, if I'm being more specific. But it's mostly related to me just getting in my own head about writing a good script and just over-analyzing everything. But to be honest, while I'm listening to my friends and others make podcasts, they don't have scripts. Maybe they have notes, but they're just talking. And I think that's what I'm going to try doing going forward. It's going to make things a lot easier, both with this mental hurdle I have, but also just practically speaking, I'm just going to talk about news into the microphone, and hopefully it's interesting. So pardon my dust, but let's get started with a new segment that I like to call Glass Half Full of News. First topic I want to talk about is something that I have been wanting to talk about for a long time, but with all the news that has been coming out lately, it's kind of, I don't know what else could happen to make this topic more interesting. And yes, of course, we are going to talk about Xbox. More specifically, we're going to be talking about the bright side of what's going on with Xbox. But before we jump into that, first and foremost, we got to talk about Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer is, in my opinion, and this might be a controversial opinion, a Mount Rushmore gaming executive. There are not a lot of people out there who I respect and admire in the gaming industry, at least from a executive level. There's a lot of really talented developers I'd love to talk about. But from a gaming executive level, Phil is like up there for me. Like, he's up there with the Miyamotos and whatnot. He basically saved Xbox from the dark abyss after Don Matrick kind of made some questionable choices, both just the choices we know about, but also a lot of stuff behind the scenes that really shook up the culture of Xbox. And Phil came in and he brought it back from the brink. The fact that we're still talking about Xbox and playing Xbox, we can kind of put that at Phil's feet. And so it is sad to see him go. I'm happy that it was a retirement, which on the surface, at least, it makes us feel like, it's kind of his decision. He's going on his terms. But nonetheless, his leaving has led to some big changes over on the green team. I think none more bigger than the fact that they hired Asha Sharma to be the new CEO of Xbox, which is her technical title. Now, there's a lot of takes going around about this hire. There's I would say a lot of doom and gloom happening based on just what I've seen. That ain't me. We're not going to be doom and gloom here, okay? I'm extremely optimistic about this hire. I think that the reason that they brought her in, a lot of people point to the 2 years or just over 2 years that she spent leading up Microsoft's Core AI product, emphasis on the word product, and they're looking at that and saying, oh, AI bad, she's coming over because she's AI, everything AI, Microsoft AI, Satya AI this, AI that. But they're not looking at the 12, 14, whatever years she spent in a bunch of other different roles at a bunch of other different companies. There is one correlation, though, with all of her resume, and that is she goes into a business, quickly develops an expertise on that business. And these are completely different businesses. We have AI. We also have groceries. We also have startups and a bunch of other things, Meta. So it's not like she's been working in AI her whole life. I don't think describing her as an AI specialist is very valid. If you look at her entire career and look at the commonalities between all of her roles, like I was about to say, she specializes in joining a team, quickly ramping up and becoming an expert on the product, just like it was the Core AI product. She becomes an expert on the product and is just, for whatever reason, very gifted in being able to present that product to customers and building a customer base and gaining users. She did that at a startup. She did that at Instacart. She did that at Meta, and she did that at Core AI. And now her job is to do that at Xbox. There's been people like Travis Northup on the Bitcast and at IGN who is more than just a reviewer, if you can believe it or not. He's very well-versed and fluent in the startup culture in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, which is where startups are where they propagate the most, let's just say. And he had heard of her through the grapevine before she even started at Microsoft because of her ability to do just that. Become an expert on a product, figure out the best way to position that product in the market, and gain a lot of users and customers. for whatever reason. And that's what they hope she's going to do with Xbox. And that's what I hope that she's going to do with Xbox. I don't view her as an AI person or an AI specialist. I think of her long career of understanding products, understanding how to position products, and growing users. I think she had two years of that long career spent on AI, and that is what it is. So I'm very optimistic about her as the new face of Xbox. I also like that she is young, so she can be in this role for a long time if she chooses to, assuming that the success is there. I like that she is very eager and willing to understand the gamer side of things. That's not something that's necessary at all. I see some people saying she's not a gamer like Phil was. And honestly, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, the fact that Phil Spencer was a real gamer, he was a real ass gamer. You could look on your Xbox friends list if you have him on there, and you can see him playing games all the time. He knows what he's talking about. He has a long history. That's really cool. As an Xbox fan, it's really cool to know that your leader is a gamer. Like, that's an added benefit. But it's not the be-all, end-all. And just a quick note, just another little anecdote I just thought of, like with Phil Spencer. I remember listening to him in an interview talking about how he was, I think, a producer or part of the reason why Voodoo Vince on the original Xbox was a thing. And I remember he was talking about that because they had brought Voodoo Vince back on Xbox One as like a remaster or whatnot. It was kind of a small project, but you could tell it was a passion project for him. And I thought it was cool because when I was a kid, I grew up playing the demo disc from the official Xbox magazine of Voodoo Vince and then renting the game from Blockbuster and having a really fun time. I remember liking that game. And then when the remaster came out, I got that game and I played it with co-pilot with my daughter, who I think was like 2 or 3 at the time. And she really liked it too. And I just thought that was a really cool full circle moment. So I was just like, I'll shoot my shot. I have Phil Spencer on my Xbox friends list. So I'll just DM the head of Xbox and say, hey, thanks for getting Voodoo Vince remastered, random message. And I'll just send that. I'll say, I loved the game when I was a kid and I just got done playing with my daughter. It was a full circle moment. Basically what I just told you guys. And I sent the message, and guess what? 10 minutes later, I get a response from Phil Spencer. I mean, it wasn't like he didn't write me paragraphs, but he said, "Hey, I appreciate your love for Voodoo Vince, and thank you for being for playing it. I love to hear those types of family moments," or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what it was. And you could say, "Oh, it's probably an intern just pretending." No, dude, he was literally in the middle of a Destiny strike, and when the strike was over, he responded to my message. So that's just the type of guy he was, and I'll be lying if I tell you that it's not cool to know that your CEO is like that. And Asha Sharma, obviously, she's not a lifelong gamer, but I will say, one, as I mentioned before, that's not a requirement. Look at the head of EA and how successful they are. I know that's kind of, a lot of people hate EA, but regardless, that's a really successful company. Look at the head of Rockstar. He's not a gamer. Go back in Xbox's past. Robbie Bach, the guy who basically started Xbox, not a gamer. Peter Moore, a lot of people view the 360 as like the good times of being an Xbox fan. I personally think the 360 is the greatest video game console of all time. And the man that was at the head of Xbox at that time was Peter Moore, who came from Reebok. He's not a gamer. He left Xbox because he liked soccer more and went to go work with a soccer program. So like, you don't have to be this excellent gamer to be like run the gaming business. You have to understand business, and you have to understand like the higher level stuff. There's people under Asha who are going to be in charge of choosing what games make sense to make and whatnot. So I love that Phil was a gamer, but I'm not going to hold that against her, that she's not one. But I am going to point out that it is really awesome that she's willing to take her spare time, create a gamer tag, interface with the community, and actually play games to try and get it. And based on the few things we have from her, the little snippets of information that she's tweeting out, it seems like she is understanding things. It's not like she's like, oh, I like Fortnite because it's the most popular game. No, she's talking about games like Valheim, games like Firewatch as being some of the games that are inspiring her. And those are really awesome games that are enjoyed by the core gamer. It's not Fortnite, it's not Madden, it's not FIFA. You know what I mean? So... And there's going to be critics out there. They're going to be saying, oh, she's got an intern writing these, and oh, it's a bot. She's AI response, yada. No, my whole thing is you hear the phrase all the time. You had to trust is earned, right? I think that's true for sure, but I also think mistrust is earned. So all the things that she's saying about what she wants to do, all of it sounds great to me. Okay. And I'm going to believe that that's her goal. And until she changes it or does something to go stray from that path or whatever, I'm going to trust her until she gives me a reason not to. I like to be optimistic. I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, especially when we have nothing to judge her on. Like, it's not like she's done a bunch of bad things. You'd think that based on some of what some people are saying about her, but I'm going to be optimistic, and I am really, really hopeful for the future of Xbox. And now, since everybody else is playing Armchair CEO, I thought that maybe I would as well. Now, obviously, I'm going to preface this portion of the segment by saying I am not a CEO. I do not run a business. I do not really know about what's involved with that at all. Okay. I am just a person who really loves Xbox. I think I have a pretty good knowledge and understanding of Xbox from a gamer's perspective. I would say I'm above average in that regard. And I have some thoughts about what I would do. And I wrote them down. So let's go through it. First thing, be proud. Be proud of Xbox. I think they should create a new banner and new branding around Xbox Game Studios and have that banner and branding include ABK, include Bethesda, and put it everywhere. When I launch an Xbox game, a Bethesda game, an ABK game on PlayStation or Steam, this awesome new Xbox branding should be front and center. It should be on the Steam page, the PSN page. It should be a startup animation when you launch the game. Be proud of this vast array of studios and power and games that you have. It should be everywhere. Anytime anybody on PlayStation or Steam plays an Xbox game, they should know damn well they're playing an Xbox game. Before they even get to move a character or press a button, they should be well aware where this game is coming from, and they should celebrate that. It should be they need to be making collector's editions, making consoles that are collector's editions. Like, celebrate Xbox, this awesome thing we have. I don't think we've even ever gotten a limited edition Xbox Series S or S consoles outside of the ones that are like marketing giveaways. We didn't have a Starfield Xbox Series X. We got a console wrap. Now, I think the console wraps are cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying get rid of them, but just be proud. Be proud that we have these games in these studios. And everyone that plays it, regardless if they're on an Xbox or not, they should know. They should know where this game is coming from and what company is responsible for this experience. And I hate that ABK and Bethesda are kind of seen by a lot of people as separate from Xbox. I know they operate on their own and they have their own marketing, whatever. Bring it in. I'm not saying take away control from the people at Bethesda, people at Activision, but we should be viewed as a cohesive unit. There should be an Xbox logo at the start of World of Warcraft on Battle.net. This is who's paying for it, okay? This is an Xbox game now. I want everybody to know that. Next up, we got be proud. Next up, be competitive. No more losing the power battle. Yeah, our games are going to be on PlayStation and PlayStation 5, and they're going to be pro enhanced, but the Xbox is going to be the best place to play it on console. We are going to have the most powerful console at the start of next gen, and if there's going to be a mid-gen refresh, Xbox is going to be right there too. They've always been the most powerful console. They need to continue that streak. Aside from the Xbox One, which coincidentally is when this ship started to change directions. No more losing the power battle. And this is going to be hard to manage, but on top of not losing the power battle, no more losing the price battle. Right now in Canada, if you want to buy a PlayStation 5 with a disc drive, I believe it's $649. Some would argue that the PlayStation 5 is slightly more powerful, slightly less powerful, whatever. There's not really a disparity there. I would chalk them up to being equal, but the Series X equivalent, like the Series X with the disc drive, is $729. So not only are you not winning the power battle, but you're also losing the price battle. That's in contrast with the Xbox One X, which was close in price to the PS4 Pro and destroyed it in power. The 360 was cheaper than the PS3, and they were close, but the 360 it ran games way better. original Xbox, there has literally never been a bigger power gap in a generation than the PS2 and the Xbox original. No one gives it the credit it deserves for this, but there are literal games that just could not function on a PS2. That's how big the gap was. And the games that did kind of work on both, sometimes they had to get completely different development studios to make the PS2 one because the original game, without a mass amount of downgrades, would just not function on a PS2. The gap was that big. And I don't know if they're ever going to get a gap that's that big again. Like I said, there's never been a gap that's that big ever outside of this generation. But there needs to be a gap that people can identify, and they can't lose the price battle doing so. Be competitive. Next point, it kind of meshes up with the first point I have, but be everywhere. I want to see Xbox in magazines. I want to see Xbox publisher sales all over Steam all the time. Banners, Xbox publisher sale banner on the PlayStation Network. Yes, they will do that. Nintendo as well. I want them to be everywhere. I want them to win the battle in retailers. There should be just as big a shelf of Xbox as there is PlayStation, which means, yes, we can't abandon physical games. I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I will say, if you are somebody who's buying their first console, like let's say you have parents who are not gamers and they're buying a console for their kid, okay? That is kind of the only way that the console industry grows, is when people have kids, non-gamers have kids, and those kids play games. When they go into a store, which people still do, you still walk into Walmart, you still walk into Best Buy or Target or whatever, and or GameStop, and you walk into that store and you see a shelf that's completely full of Nintendo games, a shelf that's completely full of PlayStation games, and then you see an Xbox shelf that's bare bones. And then you look at the pre-orders. Let's see what's coming. You talk to the person who's working at that store, especially if it's GameStop, where they're really incentivized to get pre-orders. Most of the time, if the game's not physical, it's not up for pre-order, so it's not there. And beside that, let's go on socials. Let's talk about people that maybe are considering upgrading to a console. Maybe they're kind of in tune with gaming enough where they're following Wario64, or they're following like Cheap Ass Gamer, or they're even just looking at flyers and stuff. If something goes on sale at Best Buy, yes, it's going to be in the Best Buy flyer, but Wario64, someone with 1 million followers, is also going to retweet that. And a lot of other people that follow him are going to retweet that as well. And it exponentially gets the word out. And guess what? Logos are not in those tweets because the games are not in the stores. Xbox. Change that. Xbox should be everywhere. Last point I have is be innovators. Xbox, she says this in her note, that they were the rebellious spirit that started Xbox in the first place, I believe was her quote. Xbox has always been innovative. Sometimes in a ways that didn't work out, but a lot of times in ways that completely shifted the industry. I'm going to talk about the original Xbox One a lot for the rest of my life because that console's goated. Okay, but that console came out with a hard drive, extremely innovative for the time. It came out with broadband internet, extremely innovative at the time. It ran DirectX to allowing PC games to be easily ported or more easily ported to it, extremely innovative at the time. The Xbox 360 pioneered the digital marketplace. It predates Steam. It pioneered party chats and group chats before Skype. Okay? The original Xbox, Halo 2 even, some could argue, was the original social network. I remember coming home from school every day, loading up my Xbox, jumping into Halo lobbies, and talking to my friends. That was before Facebook. Even the Xbox One, there's a lot of people, obviously, and myself included, that doesn't like how much they went into the sports TV. But having that extra HDMI port, regardless of the damage that it did to the messaging, that was innovative. I remember plugging my 360 into that port, and I had full backwards compatibility through that console. I had to switch controllers, but it worked on my TV. It worked with my headphones and whatnot. It was really cool. And they kind of slipped away from that. There are still innovations that they're doing. Obviously, Game Pass is extremely innovative, but I want to see some stuff. It's going to be harder. It's kind of, innovation in tech kind of aligns with Moore's Law a little bit, where it's harder. The more innovative people are, the harder it is to continuously innovate. But there's still things they can do. I think even something as simple as updating the Elite controllers. Why do third parties have these TMR sticks and micro switches on the face buttons and micro mouse click triggers, and the biggest company in the world doesn't? We should have that in Elite controllers. Elite controllers should be updated like biannually. They should have Elite headsets. I think that it would be really awesome if they built a Portal-like device that could stream from both an Xbox and a PC easily. Xbox is going to be limited in its bitrate and streaming, but if you have a PC right now in the Xbox app, it's not easy to stream from your PC to a handheld device. But because of the extra power your PC has, it should be easy, and it should be a really good experience because of the bitrate. Look at Steam Link. Steam Link works amazing. Steam Link is near native if you have something like a the Steam Link hardware device, or if you use something like Sunshine and Moonlight. It's a near native experience, and you could like mash up an Xbox controller with a screen like a Portal and sell that and have it natively connect to your Xbox app on your PC via Game Pass or your hardware and have a better streaming experience than xCloud, which would be at less cost than xCloud because you're using your local network to stream. You're not using Xbox servers. This is a layup device. It would work so well. And it's something that you can sell to PC gamers and Xbox gamers, but they're not doing it. The final thing I want to say with Be Innovators is build small studios. Obviously, acquiring things like ABK, acquiring Bethesda, those are massive, massive, massive studios to get. But I think for Game Pass and how Game Pass works, they could be really innovative in the space of spinning up smaller studios and just having a good cadence of Game Pass releases. Obviously, you're not going to make a bunch of Sandfalls that are going to pump out a bunch of Clair Obscurs, but something at the level of Hades, something like that is a relatively small studio. And if you get a bunch of them going, if it doesn't work out, the layoffs are not going to be that as tragic, and it's going to be way easier to kind of get those people keep them within Microsoft Game Studios, spread them across if necessary. But you're going to have way more shots at finding a hit, and you're going to have the backing to be able to spin them up. One idea that I thought of a while ago that I think would be a really cool idea, even if Microsoft doesn't do this, any of the big companies can. If you spun up a studio that had a couple of really talented veterans leading it, but was predominantly kind of made up of new graduates, Seattle, the West Coast of America, there's a ton of schools that have a ton of kids in there learning how to make games. And if you had a studio whose primary goal was to be led by these industry veterans and have them spin up remakes and remasters, something like Oblivion Remastered, or even if they looked at really old games like Crimson Skies or something like that, low-risk games where you can have these kids come out of school, be led by industry veterans, become like much better craftsmen in terms of making games, have them work on these low-risk projects like remasters and remakes. Now you've created this farm league kind of talented developers that could come in and then start working on some of the higher end projects once they get some of these games under their wing, while at the same time you're making all of these awesome remakes of iconic older Xbox games that people really want to see. I think that's a really innovative way to get young talent from the industry into your ecosystem. You get really good fan service by making these low-risk remakes that are going to be appealing to a lot of fans of old Xbox IP, or be great introductions to these games to new fans of the Xbox IP, while growing the industry, growing your brand, and facilitating like the most talented young people coming out of school. Make this a program in these universities where you can apply for a direct internship into this new like farm league for Microsoft. That is an innovative idea that I think could pay a lot of dividends. But yeah, that's what I would do. That's where I would start anyway. If I was a CEO of Xbox, and again, I'm not a CEO. I don't really know what's going on in the business world, but as an Xbox fan, someone who vaguely understands software development and that industry, I think that is where I would start. I'm not calling for these drastic shifts like bring back exclusives or like delete Sony or like things like that. I think these are relatively realistic ways that they could bring, quote unquote, usher in the return of Xbox, but that's my 2 cents. I also want to end this segment by saying what I won't do, because I think this is kind of important too, especially with what we're reading online, different reactions from different outlets and stuff like that. What I won't do is I won't abandon Xbox. What I won't do is I'm not going to abandon my favorite IP in gaming. Xbox literally are the arbiters of all the IP I care about. And I'm not going to abandon the people who make them too. I'm going to be on their side till the end because they make the best games in the world for me. They own the IP that I love. I was an Xbox fan yesterday, Xbox fan today, Xbox fan every day. Let's go. All right, let's get into our next topic, which is all things Marathon. At least my first impressions of Marathon. And a little bit later on, I'm going to kind of compare it to Arc Raiders. For anybody who's a big Arc Raiders fan, you want to know the difference between Marathon and Arc Raiders, I got you covered there as well. So first impressions of Marathon. No surprise, shocker, all-time surprise. This game's gunplay is absolutely amazing. Bungie are goated. They've always been goated. They make the best shooters of all time, and they still got it. The gunplay in this game feels incredible. Every engagement, not just shooting, but also the feedback from when you're hitting your target, the cool things that happen when you kill a NPC or a player, the skull that show, like every aspect of the entire loop of getting into a gunfight feels amazing. Just like Destiny, just like Halo. I would argue that this kind of feels like a little bit of a mix of Apex and Destiny. With it's a little bit less floaty than Destiny. Feels a little bit like Apex, but still has the Destiny kind of incredible gunplay. One thing that I literally cannot understand this at all. And I know like art is subjective, and so I guess I understand it from that perspective, but I'm seeing so many people kind of put this game to the side or kind of poo-poo it a little bit because of the visuals. They don't like the art style, the UI, yada yada. I think that this is one of the most, if not the most, visually impressive multiplayer game I've ever seen. I'm someone who plays a ton of multiplayer games, especially shooters, okay? So when a game comes out that's as visually distinct as Marathon, it is so awesome to see. I think Arc Raiders definitely has its own visual kind of style, but you can kind of see where the influences are pulled from a little bit. Like there's a little bit of Fallout here, you know, a little bit of the intro sequence to Star Wars here. It definitely is unique. I'm not trying to say it's not unique, but you can kind of see where the influences come from. Whereas this game, this feels very, very fresh and unique. I could show you some screenshots from Arc Raiders or from a lot of shooters, and you might have a hard time guessing what game that is. You are never going to mistake Marathon for something else. And the colors and the use of colors really pop on the OLED. I am very, very impressed with the visuals and the art style. The UI as well, man. Like, I hear a lot of complaints about the UI. Again, I don't understand most of that because they're trying something new. It feels like a lot of people, honestly, are justifying the use of the yellow paint, if you know what I mean. Because I am tired of every game having the same menus, the same UI, and it feels like once Overwatch came out, for example, it felt like for years every game just had the same menu as Overwatch. And then another game comes out and changes things a little bit, and now that's the guiding star for game UI. So I am happy that there's something different. I will say that based on how weird the world is, and how every item you loot is something that is not immediately identifiable to a normal human. It is a little bit of a learning curve because when you're looting all these things, you have to kind of read the tooltips and try to figure out what they are. Like, for example, in Arc Raiders, you pick up a device that looks a little bit weird, but it's called a shield charger. And then you're like, okay, that charges shields. And then you pick up a device that looks like a bandage, and it's called a bandage. And guess what? It's a bandage, and it heals you. So it's very easily identifiable. You pick up rubber parts, you pick up metal parts, you can assume that those are going to be used for crafting. In Marathon, everything has a weird name. I couldn't even tell you the names of things. So when you pick something up and you see a weird shape or something that looks like a Ziploc bag and you're like, what is that? It's sometimes hard to identify them. And I will say some of the things like the mods that you buy, a lot of them all have the same silhouette, and they have like different little images in them, and it's very difficult to tell what does what without reading tooltips. So from that perspective, I can agree with the UI having some issues, but after a while, after a few runs, you start to learn what things are, and you start to be able to identify them easier, and it's kind of just a learning curve. So I appreciate the fact that they're going for something new and fresh, way more than I'm a little bit frustrated trying to learn what these different icons mean and whatnot. But overall, the UI and the visuals are sublime to me. The biggest surprise, though, because I mean, going into this, I knew what it looked like from screenshots and trailers. I already knew I was going to like the style and the art style, and I knew it was Bungie, so I knew the gunplay was going to be fantastic. It was just nice to be able to confirm those things. One thing I was very surprised with, though, is how awesome the world building and lore is. So one thing that sets this apart from Arc Raiders a little bit, and I was planning on kind of separating my first impressions and then the differences between it and Arc Raiders, but it's kind of just blending together right now, so we'll just go with it. But in Arc Raiders, obviously they set the world up pretty nicely. You're forced underground, the Arc are above ground, you have to go up to scavenge, yada yada. And I think some of the early kind of trailers that you get from some of the starter missions are pretty interesting, and I do like Arc Raiders. I like that world. Marathon, though, is another level, because the amount of risks and uniqueness that you see in just the art style from just like the gameplay, that is amplified by 1,000 when it comes to the cutscenes. In this game, instead of having these vendors that are just kind of in Speranza, that are mostly just static images, and they don't really have a lot of personality or character, in my opinion, Arc Raiders has what's called factions, and these are the people that will basically give you contracts and missions to go into the world and accomplish while you're in the PvE zones, PvE VP extraction zones. And they all are so cool. Like every time you unlock one, you get this awesome cutscene that kind of not only explains what the faction does, but kind of also gives you like the vibe of the factions and the use of color, the cinematography, the audio feedback, the music, everything that's happening here. They're so visually distinct. They are so interesting to look at. It's just insanely cool. And I like the idea of these factions all being in conflict with one another to a certain degree, and how they play off each other and being able to represent different ones. I think the world building and lore is really, really cool in Marathon, and that's a big step over what's in Arc Raiders. And this is just a beta, so we're looking at the very beginnings of these factions. We don't have all the maps, and it's just really cool. Gameplay loop in Marathon, it does differ a little bit from Arc Raiders, I would say. Definitely the dial for PvP is definitely tuned way more to the right than it is in Arc Raiders, where I find Arc Raiders is drifting more and more towards being a PvE game, although obviously there's still PvP in it. And some of the things I noticed, like for example, I played Arc Raiders in some early press builds, like this, I think last spring before it came out in the fall, and I played all the betas, and I played a ton of it after launch. And very quickly you learn that there's a level of community there where you see a lot of proximity chat happening. You're interacting with raiders. Sometimes you're forming fragile alliances and whatnot. And I haven't honestly seen that in Marathon very much, or ever. I don't think the only proxy chat that I thought I heard were bots trying to pretend to be humans and bait me out to kill me, which was really freaky, but also really awesome. There's just not as much player interaction outside of trying to kill each other. Every map that I've been in, it's very sweaty. Well, I mean, I hesitate to call it very sweaty, but it's very aggressive, I would say. There's definitely, everyone's looking to kill one another as much as they can, as fast as they can. And the maps are small enough to facilitate that a little bit better than Arc Raiders as well, which is nice. One thing that's really cool that will impact kind of how the game plays throughout the long run is what it feels like based on what I've played in the 2 maps in the beta and what they're alluding to with the future maps, is that each map is going to escalate things a lot. In Arc Raiders, yes, I would argue in Stella Montis, there's definitely more PvP than in other maps. So maybe you could say that map's quote unquote more difficult than the rest of them. But I find that the level of difficulty between Dam Battlegrounds and Buried City and Spaceport and Blue Gate, I don't think the level of difficulty really changes much. I think that obviously the POEs change, the vibe changes. Like you're going from a spaceport to like this kind of swampy dam to like a city. Like the vibe changes. They're definitely visually distinct from each other. And maybe you could argue like how they play is a little bit different because Blue Gate is way more open, so you might want more range, and Buried City is not as much openness. So you might want, like closer range guns. So there is definitely some variability there. But with Marathon, the difference between Perimeter, which is like the introductory map, and Dire Marsh, which is kind of like the level 2 map, the difference between difficulty in those two maps is very noticeable. And that's just going from 1 to 2. And there's going to be 2 more maps at launch and then however many down the road. And from what they're explaining, it seems like it's going to ramp up pretty quickly. Where if you're going to go to these higher level maps, you're going to have more at stake. You're going to have more like better gear. And that to me is a really interesting progression. I'll also say that in Marathon, the amount of customization that you have with your kit, your loadout, your character it dwarfs Arc Raiders for sure. You have so many different stats that you can manipulate with different add-ons, different ways to customize guns, adding different sights, adding different mods, kind of like Arc Raiders, but it just feels like a little bit more in depth. And then the progression system also seems to be a little bit deeper because each faction is essentially a skill tree that you can upgrade independently. So when you start the game, you start with one faction and the rest of them open up pretty quickly. At least in the beta, maybe that's going to be tuned differently at launch. But in the beta, I ended up unlocking all the factions in just like the first 2 days of playing. And then each faction has its own skill tree. So as you choose, whichever ones you choose to level up, you're going to be leveling up these skills. And the skills seem more impactful than what's available in the skill tree in Arc Raiders. So like an example, in Arc Raiders, you can level up a skill that will make your ability to recover stamina when it's depleted a little bit faster while crouched. Like that's hard to really tell. Like I've maxed that out myself personally, and I can't see a huge difference in stamina recovery. It seems very small, incremental. There are some big things like the security breach. Obviously, when you unlock that in Arc Raiders, it's a big deal. I know I'm getting to the weeds here, but I feel like if you're listening to me talk about Marathon and Arc Raiders, you are in the weeds with me. In Marathon, though, you have more impactful upgrades, and you get to choose what to upgrade a little bit more, and there's just more options. There's 7 factions versus like 3 skill trees in Arc Raiders. And the beta doesn't even have the silk progression or seasonal progression, so there's more to it than even what's there now, and I just really like it. So me, myself, as somebody who's more into PvP, even when I'm playing Arc Raiders, I'm usually looking for a fight with other Raiders. I tend to like Marathon a little bit more, at least the first impression that Marathon gives. And obviously, I'm a Bungie fanboy, so that doesn't help Arc Raiders. Ideally, in a perfect world, these games will trade blows in terms of when they release their major content updates, and I can kind of flip back and forth between them because I do really, really enjoy both of them. But yeah, that's my impressions of Marathon. I'm looking forward to its release on this Thursday, actually, and yeah, I'm going to be playing a ton of it. So hit me up. We'll swap Bungie IDs. We'll get some runs in. I think Marathon is very, very cool. But that's it for the topics of this episode. I would like to transition to a different segment, one that I like to call The Hype Train Cometh. News, rumors, and notes from around the industry. Now, this segment, I'll introduce it a little bit. I am somebody who's obsessed with finding out the latest rumors circling around the games industry. It's something that I do every day, and if that's interesting to you, I'll share some of the bigger ones that I've seen so far last week. First up, Starfield is coming to PS5. Now, we all kind of suspected this was happening. I don't think that in and of itself is much of a rumor, but there's more to this one. They're saying April 7th, and pre-orders are going to go live March 17th, 18th, alongside the 2.0, quote 2.0 update. And when it hits PlayStation 5, along with the Xbox version, it's planned to be at a lower price point. I think it's going to be hard for me to do the math here, but it says that it's going to be priced at 50 US. I think at launch it probably would have been 70 US, something like that. So I think that's a $20 discount, which is really cool for PlayStation users, really cool for Xbox users who are not on Game Pass, who haven't picked it up yet. And this rumor is coming from Bill Kuhn, which, if you don't know who that is a very, very reliable source. So I do believe that we will see pre-orders going live March 17th, March 18th. What that means in the grander scheme, like how do they announce that? I don't know. It seems strange to me to take an IP as big as Starfield and just like reveal the 2.0 and the PlayStation version in like a tweet or something. So hopefully there's like a small event. Again, going back to my Xbox talk, Xbox Everywhere, they should be doing more events, even though the Developer Direct and the Summer Showcase and their presence at the Gamescom, as well as Tokyo Game Show and the Game Awards, has been really good. They're the most present right now of the major platform holders by far, by a long shot. But more showcases or little kind of different drops, videos or whatever. I don't think the more the merrier. I would like to see more than a tweet to reveal this news about Starfield, but I do believe Bill Kuhn. I don't think I've ever seen this person be wrong. I think they must have some connection or to the back end or something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, March 17th, 18th, pre-orders go live, allegedly, and the release on PlayStation 5 is April 7th, and it will be at a lower price, $50 US. Next up, we have some news with Cory Barlog's next God of War game, and that it does not feature the God of War himself, which is certainly a bold strategy from my perspective. It's a game that's supposed to be centered around Faye, be more actiony, more action-packed is what they said. I don't know what that means because God of War is very action-packed already. This rumor is coming from Nate the Hate, who is very reliable, I would say, and it kind of backs up Jason Schreier's comments a little while ago, where he teased that Sony's Santa Monica's next game is, quote, not a new IP, but it might feel like one. Allegedly, you're going to be playing as Faye, Kratos' wife from God of War Ragnarok, portrayed by Deborah Ann Wall, who I love. I'm a little bit skeptical on this now. I mean, I can't really say anything negative because regardless of what the game ends up being, I'm buying it. Like, I love Sony Santa Monica. I love the God of War series. So I'm buying whatever they make. But just in the past, I've seen games like Halo 5 try to move away from the game's main protagonist and it not really go over well with fans. I think fans that have been waiting this is another part of this is that it's supposed to come out sometime in the first half of 2027. So let's say it comes out next year. That would be 5 years in the waiting for God of War fans waiting for the next entry, and you don't get to play as Kratos. Now, hopefully, in my opinion, it's a game with dual protagonists at least, and there are some Kratos moments because obviously he's the man. That's who we want to play as. No disrespect to Faye or Deborah Ann Wall. I think that character is interesting. I think that she's a phenomenal actress. I trust Cory Barlog with my gaming life, and I trust Sony Santa Monica. I am excited for whatever they're making, but I think that they're going to have a tough job ahead of them to sell people that aren't like me, who are just like understand how great of a studio that is and how and respect the craftsmanship that's going to go into whatever they make. The marketing is going to have to be on point with this one if these rumors are true. The last rumor I want to talk about is that Sony is allegedly moving away from the PC initiative. This is coming from Jason Schreier and Tom Lindemann, as well as Nate the Hate. So a lot of good sources here. A lot of people corroborating this. I think it's questionable. I think it's not the rumor itself, but the strategy of moving out of PC. I think the only way that it would make sense is if they had some data that shows that these PC sales are somehow hurting their console sales. But, I mean, the data doesn't really show this. If you look at the console sales, I mean, all the things that are going against the PS5, like today's economy, the manufacturing hurdles that they're going to be that they have been facing throughout the entire lifespan of the PS5, based on all of those hurdles, the sales of the PlayStation 5 should be suffering a lot, but it's almost on pace with the PS4, which didn't have to worry about any of those problems. So I think the sales of PS5 is extremely strong. So the data doesn't really back up that the PC initiative is hurting it. The other thing that could make sense, and this is what I would bet money on, is that they are feeling a little bit of a pinch financially. That's why we had the tragic news about Blue Point last week. They are looking to become not to sell more units in terms of consoles, but to just be more lean and more profitable. And that's what all businesses are doing. That's why you're seeing a lot of cuts after the pandemic boom. And what I think could be happening is that they are potentially planning, this is pure speculation, by the way. Again, I'm not an executive. I don't work at Sony. I don't know anything. I'm just a gamer who reads a lot. But what could make sense is that they're planning on taking Nixxes and their expertise, their very, very good reputation and expertise, and are going to, instead of applying that to porting these games to PC, which have been, for the most part, all fantastic ports, but they could be trying to convert that expertise into helping them with PlayStation Studios games, like helping them get across the finish line. We saw already that Blue Point helped get Ragnarok across the finish line, and they could be looking to use Nixxes expertise in that realm, take them off of PC ports. Because if you look at the numbers here, yes, the PC ports over the 5 years they've been doing them have generated $1.5 billion, which you look at what it would have cost for Nixxes to do that, pales in comparison to $1.5 billion. But the other thing that pales in comparison is the difference between what the console has made in revenue versus what the PC games have. The PC games have generated that money. A lot of it's backloaded too. There's a very big fall off of recent releases not doing as well as previous ones. And there's a lot of factors for that, but the data shows what it shows, and it shows that the novelty seems to be wearing off on that. So if they're going to get rid of Blue Point, which they have, they're going to need someone to potentially step in and help these games get across the finish line. There's very few developers at Sony that are going to be as talented as Nixxes would be in that role. So it would make sense if they're going to help them get Intergalactic across the finish line, or help them get this new Cory Barlog game potentially across the finish line. They could use that talent to get these PlayStation Studios games across the finish line faster, aka have the budgets for those games be smaller, have the ability, the issues that they have with these long development times, potentially get the turnaround time better. That is the only thing that makes sense to me. Because, yeah, they're making profit by launching these games on PC, but it's not about making profit. It's about the money that you spend, aka the salaries that you spend at Nixxes, making the most return on that they can. And I think from their perspective, having these games from PlayStation Studios come out maybe 6 months earlier, maybe a year earlier, depending on how many people are working on it at Nixxes, having a team be flexible enough to kind of help multiple projects at once, I think that's more valuable to them potentially, that's my guess, than making these games for PC. So we'll see if this ends up being true. I will say there's a lot of big names behind this rumor, so we'll see. I think that if this decision was made recently, there's going to be a lot of games from PlayStation Studios that still make their way here because they're far along. But in the next, like, if we see something like Wolverine or something like Intergalactic appear on PlayStation or appear on PC, then yeah, I think we can chuck this rumor out, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Finally, let's wrap things up with what I'm playing. Now, mostly what I'm playing is Marathon. We talked about that quite a bit. So yes, I'm playing Marathon, but we'll skip over that one for now. I actually wrapped Resident Evil Village twice last week because I am an insane person who was trying to figure out where I should buy Requiem, if I should buy it on PlayStation or if I should buy it on PC. So I played through Village on PlayStation and PC. I know that makes no sense. I know that sounds weird. It sounds really weird to say it out loud, but that's what I did. My thoughts on Village is that game is exceptional. I love that game. I definitely don't agree with Hogue. Check out the Bitcast for his take on that game. It definitely strays from the horror a lot, except for one section that is, oh my God, the most nightmare-inducing thing I've ever seen in a video game. Almost like, oh my, I had to play it twice as well. Jesus, stay away from the Benevito Manor, if you know what I'm talking. If you know, you know. Okay. But I really like that game. I like when Resident Evil has kind of like a a horror vibe, but it's more wacky and crazy, and that's kind of what this game is. I don't think I was very scared very often, but the game is extremely well made, very fun to play. The story took some interesting turns, although it wasn't like I was playing The Witcher or anything, or Expedition 33. It wasn't that level. Obviously, it's still a campy horror game. But Resident Evil is the franchise that keeps on giving. If you're wondering where I ended up, I think that the PC version of Village plays phenomenally. It felt awesome to play it on an Xbox controller. The frame rates were amazing. I was getting like 200 plus FPS on a 3080. The PlayStation 5 version randomly had a patch to add a advertisement for Requiem. Basically, that's all the patch was supposed to do, but it broke the 120 FPS mode. So coming out of those two games, I was definitely leaning PC, but then I also just like booted up RE4 just to try it out, because that's kind of the most recent one, the most recent RE Engine Resident Evil game. And on PlayStation 5, it runs amazing. And if it's not 120 FPS, it's close. Looks amazing. Obviously, I'd prefer an Xbox controller over a DualSense, but it was great. However, on the PC version of RE4, I don't know if it's the new DRM that they've added or something, but there's some weird bug where it's not utilizing all of my CPU cores, and there are some weird things. I don't know if it has to do with like Windows scheduling or something weird with Windows, but I had a couple, it wasn't frequent, but it was enough where it was noticeable, of these crazy performance hitches where I'd go from a constant like 200-ish FPS on like RE4 or even RE2. I witnessed this as well, RE2 Remake, and it would just die. It would just die to like 10 FPS for a second and come back. And I had that happen twice in RE4 and twice in RE2 just in the first hour or two of gameplay. And I was like, I'm not dealing with that. I mean, I don't know what's causing it. It's just a quirk of being a PC gamer, I guess. But on the PlayStation 2, I played through 6 hours of Resident Evil 4. Did not have it happen once. Yes, the overall visual quality was slightly worse. Yes, it was 120 FPS, not 200 FPS. Honestly, once you get past 120, it's a little bit hard to notice. I think it's kind of impossible to notice if you're using a controller, which I am. I think you have to have a mouse to really feel the difference there. So yeah, I got Resident Evil Requiem on PlayStation 5. I got the Steelbook. It's fantastic. It's installed. I haven't played it yet. I'm jumping into it literally as soon as I finish recording this podcast. I can't wait. We'll talk about it next week. Last game I want to shout out is Windrose, a game that had a demo drop at the Steam Next Fest. This is basically Valheim with better graphics, and instead of a Viking, you are a pirate. I'm a big fan of survival games, especially if you can play them with friends. This one is exceptionally well made. It is very heavy on the pirates, which coincidentally, I also really love pirates. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is the best Assassin's Creed game. I don't care what anyone says. That's 100% true. And this passes the vibe check for sure, with great graphics, really good vibe, like the ambiance. You end up spoilers in the beginning of the game. You're on a pirate ship, some bad stuff happens. You end up crashed on a island in an archipelago, and you had to kind of start from scratch and build a base and a hut and gather food and all the things you'd expect in a survival game. You end up making ships as well, and there's sailing and shanties, and you get a crew, and you raid ships and has ship to ship. Dude, this game rules. The one concern I have is that it's currently a demo that's leading up to an early access. I'm a big fan of buying the 1.0 versions of games. If the early access is content rich though, and is at an appealing price, I definitely would consider jumping into this. It's very fun. And if Next Fest is still on by the time you're listening to this, 100% recommend checking out that demo. But that's it for what I'm playing. And that's it for the resurgence, the comeback season of the Game Positive podcast. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of GPP. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you made it to the end, a like and subscribe would be awesome. But more importantly, I would love to hear any feedback on the format in the comments below. Remember to have fun, y'all, and be good people. Take care.